Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lawyer Lifter podcast or Mel's Minutes, where I talk about lifting life and business. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new Lawyer Lifter podcast. It's been some time, but there have been a ton of changes, and one of the biggest changes is just happening at the behest of longtime client Virus International, Inc. has now come up again. They took a hiatus, and there is a reason why there was a hiatus. And I'm joined by the new CEO of Virus, Melanie Lin, and we're going to take you through a very interesting, very intimate relationship I've had with Virus from the legal perspective, and just bring you into Virus as a homegrown, family oriented business and what it means for the future. Since everybody listening has known about Virus, we as a law firm have showcased Virus over the years, and there was a pause. There's a very amazing explanation for that, very interesting explanation. I'm excited to delve into the legal prowess that has assisted Virus in its rebirth. And Melanie, welcome.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the platform to be here. Yes, we have known each other for years, and the battle we have just faced together has been insane. And I'm really excited to have a platform to be transparent with everybody and, legally, especially for other business owners, and, people in the business world to hear what happened. I think this is just a situation and a lesson that can be learned by everybody who understands what it means to be in this place. So very excited to get into that today.
Yeah. So, um, Uplift Law, my law firm, we started really immediately with Virus as its outside general counsel and outside litigation counsel, circa end of 2020, beginning of 2021. And that was through a former officer, Ms. Ashley Cabral, and then CEO Russell Lynn. However, I want to really be candid with our listeners. My personal relationship with Virus started at the very beginning of this brand. I had come up in 2014, 2015 as a national power lifter, and I remember that there were events happening around the CrossFit arena. This is also a time where the fitness community was really coming up itself. There were the new power lifters. When I say that, there was Barbell Brigade, there was Juggernaut, there was Iron Club, and then there was CrossFit. CrossFit was starting to become this like big thing, and then with fitness becoming more of a just like more specific. No further was it just like global gym. Like you could really hone your interest in fitness and belong to a certain community. And so that was what happened. And all of a sudden, I was at Pace Setter CrossFit in Anaheim. It no longer exists, unfortunately. And there was Virus. Somehow, like, I started to see this brand, and at the time there really was only like the big box stuff. There was only Nike, there was only Adidas, there was only that type of stuff. But there was like a sale going on. I really appreciated the fact that Virus showed up at a CrossFit event, or I would see Virus at a lifting event, just like a booth, just like you and I, speaking, tried on the stuff. And what spoke to me was the functionality of the clothing. And my discipline is in powerlifting. So it was more about how that clothing moved with my body, and very less secondary, I would say, as to how it looked. And then virus just picked up to 2014, 2015 when I became aware of it. It just picked up, and like you would just everywhere. It was just like everywhere. And there were sales, there was warehouse sales back in the day. That should clue you in on how old I am. But I was there was a time when I was yearning so bad to be a virus sponsored athlete, and I got close multiple times. Multiple times. It's really funny. This was before Melanie Lin joined the company, but and before even Uplift existed, I was hungering for the chance to be sponsored. And then, lo and behold, here we are, 2021. Uplift became all of viruses legal. And so I want to just lead with that because it's important to know that virus has been around. Virus has its roots in the community. Virus understands the fitness community in all of its disciplines because it rose with all of us. And we call it the rebirth because it is truly a rebirth. Melanie, I think, shortly joined Virus after Uplift came on board. And so, Melanie, like, what back in 2014, 2015, like, what did you know about the brand? Like, what was
Yeah.
important to you?
Yeah, and to be very transparent, so in 2014, I actually just graduated high school. I was starting my first year at undergrad, just in UCLA, and I remember, people see, especially entrepreneurs, right, will understand what it takes to start a business. My father, who was the original founder and major shareholder for Virus, spent 30 years working for the big man. I mean, his original mentor was Bob Hurley, as an example. He worked with all the industry giants in surf sports and technical wear for water sports. So he took all of that know-how and used all the savings that he built up. My whole childhood, I grew up in the factories, right? I saw my parents hustle. I saw them start their own imports, exports business. And then it came to my father decided, you know what? He had foresight to see how the market was going, and that as a middleman, as a wholesaler, there was no way out. You could be cut any day. So he used his technical expertise combined with the fact that he's third generation, I'm fourth, in apparel and textile, and started Virus. So literally, I remember seeing it from my perspective of being, oh wow, my father is really taking all of the know-how, all of his savings. And I can tell you, it was actually really stressful. I didn't even know how bad it got in terms of the money, right? A lot of people know the first few years you just burn through money like it's nothing. The few million he had saved to start Virus disappeared, within months. And I remember getting a phone call when I was literally in my college dorm room, from my father saying how he may not be able to have funds to help me pay for the rest of college. Like, I didn't get any scholarships or anything like that. It even got to the point where he told me we might have to lose our house, the childhood house I grew up in, and that we might even need to tap into my sister's savings, who's 4 years younger than me. She wasn't even in university at the time. So, to be very transparent, it wasn't already an easy, glamorous journey. Virus, throughout its whole entire process as a business, has gone through so many ups and downs. And yeah, we didn't start making money as a brand until we came into inception 2010. Didn't start making money. I think the first profitable year was 2015. And that's a very common story with entrepreneurs. And even throughout this whole time, I wasn't like, I said, hey, this is my dad's thing. This is my family's thing. I want to carve my own path. So I never really saw myself being here. I always knew I wanted to be in business, but I never thought I would be here taking over essentially the family business that my father started. But I have seen and been around it essentially for a long time. And it wasn't until, 2020 when I officially joined. And this was after I just finished getting my MBA and decided to join the team and use my expertise and my knowledge to see what we could do. And that was the same time that we brought Melissa in as our counsel. So it's been a journey, to say the least.
And I think what Melanie touches on is that the beginnings of virus were very rough. And I wasn't there as legal counsel in the beginning, but when I inherited basically the virus legal, what I inherited was an incomplete piece of work. And you can see that virus had been so focused. This is very typical of businesses, small businesses like that have this idea, and all the focus is on survival, 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 and then trying to make money. And sometimes in that just rush to get out from debt, the legal infrastructure and the legal planning and the legal support lacked. So that's where Uplift came. We first were brought on to tackle a large piece of litigation. And then Mr. Lin, the former CEO, we cultivated like a very, and this is Uplift's promise, and just the vibe that we give is like, I can't actually really know where you want to go and what your heart's desire is if I don't know like what your fears are and what are the problems. And so we saw that there was, just contradictory legal transactions from the past, only because, again, the focus was let's get virus making money and less about, the organization and the foundation to support the further growth of virus. So my saying this is a lead up to the fact that ultimately that pause or that hiatus for a virus was leading towards that. I mean, we inherited something, as I said, that was an incomplete piece of work, and we then ended up utilizing one of the very serious, very technical aspects in business, which is a corporate bankruptcy. But I will tell you that viruses, our plans, though, with legal, with the officers, were always to do other alternatives rather than pull that. In fact, for a year, our whole focus was not to implement that mechanism, only because it is very complicated. It is no guarantee. And it's funny that what happens in media, or when you hear it on the news, you hear it for big companies that, oh, they file bankruptcy and they're alive, or they file this, and and you hear the negative, which is that they just filed bankruptcy and they let all these employees go, and like, oh, this money just moved and all this. And it's unfortunate, but bankruptcy, when it comes to a business, is the tool you use after everything is exhausted, but it is not a tool that is maliciously manipulated. And today, from the legal perspective, I'm going to candidly tell you that that is definitely what virus didn't do, was to just, oh, let's just do this. Because really, just to do that isn't, it's not a dream. So, yeah. And let's just bring it back. When Uplift inherited Virus Legal, we had to go in and really, I don't know, like basically perform. I say it was like a Titanic situation. I would always joke with Russell Lin and say, like, this is just like the most fucked up Titanic situation right now, Russell, and like, let's just do this. Meaning, I mean, because virus had become such a name, but we had to like plug up where the iceberg hit, but also still build the Titanic. So it was like just throwing water out, and also like, building another quarters. And we were doing that for a long time, and it was doing very well. And then what happens with some businesses, and the virus in particular, because this particular industry is very much at the whim of consumers. Meaning, when you're in the apparel industry, and I learned a lot from Russell Lin as well. He we end up as the business lawyers learning a lot of the language of every industry, but he is a master of, as Melanie had mentioned, textiles. I mean, this man grew up in textiles. So I became so much more appreciative of the fact that when I put on, those cool jade leggings, that thought process and that technology had come from, you know, Russell. Like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was some kind of material out there that just cooled and compressed? These things that virus had accumulated over the years, what we call intangible assets, the brand, these were priceless. And so when virus entered into the corporate bankruptcy arena, that took, as Melanie was there too, and very intimately involved in the resurrection of virus. It took all hands on deck to make this rebirth occur. It took, I think we probably started, what do you think, Melanie? Like spring of 2023?
Correct. Yep. And then we officially filed September of 2023, but we already stopped operations in August. So it's been now 8 months.
I want everybody to know that, like, you don't just press a button and say, like, okay, bankruptcy. For those involved in virus, that decision was so gut wrenching. And I can speak intimately for that, because I fought so hard with former CEO, like, let's just, like, just stretch it as far as we can. And Sunny, who's the outside CFO, CPA for virus, and Russell, we tried our very best, and including Melanie, to keep virus away from bankruptcy. But when the decision happened, the complications also occurred, because what bankruptcy means for a corporation is that you kill off the poison. You essentially are done with the entity. However, within an entity, there's good. And so maybe the entity is suffering from a lot of cancer, a lot of litigation, a lot of debt, a lot of just perhaps like decisions that resulted in further debt, or whatever, in relationships that were not financially feasible. So you take an entity, and in California, an entity is like a person. It's a living, breathing person. Virus, in the law's eyes, was just a walking person for the past over 10 years. And so what bankruptcy on the corporate side does is take all of that cancer, take it all out, and say, okay, virus is no longer. But as I mentioned, there's some good in there, right? There's some, in a cancer patient, there's like some organs that do work. There's some soul in there. There's some memories. What we call that on the business side, well, those are assets. For virus, for the past over 10 years, virus had become a master of these assets, meaning trademarks, meaning patents, meaning the name, meaning the formula, meaning like how they made the apparel, all of these things we wanted to keep out of the entity. And so it took my co-counsel, a specialist in corporate bankruptcy, Ms. Summershaw, and myself to work very intimately with the federal bankruptcy judge and also secured creditors of virus, the only one actually being the SBA. Everybody's probably like, SBA, God, that sounds so familiar. It should sound so familiar because in 2020, to help businesses weather the storm of COVID, the government provided loans. But guess what? That wasn't free money, guys. There are like very explicit terms in SBA loans. And so that's the government. That's no different than the IRS. That's no different than the labor board. It is a government entity that loaned you money. And so that creditor is what we call secured, meaning that's the number one. If you owe the government money, everybody else, it doesn't even matter. Even people who've sued you, the government is number one. For a virus, they had the only creditor, which was the SBA, and legal had said to the SBA, listen, we've worked with the judge. The judge has said that virus really has no other assets, but SBA, you are the government, you are the number one creditor of virus, and we understand that there are intangible assets. We want to buy them back from you because we owe you money, you know? So name your price and we want to take those things back. So we did a negotiation with the SBA, also took several months. The process took several months because when it comes to a corporation versus an individual filing bankruptcy, a corporation has to do a lot of work. You've got to convince basically every single person you owe money to, and I'm saying person, but I really mean an entity, you know, like your landlord, like, you know, your vendors, like anybody that sued you, that, hey, we're in bankruptcy and really we just don't have that liquid to give you right away. We just don't have it. So a judge is there in the bankruptcy sphere to confirm what we're saying and to stamp officially that this entity really doesn't have anything for you guys, you lower creditors. What the SBA got was the intangibles, what Melanie and everybody else at Virus is interested in, the brand itself. And so the SBA held those keys until we did a deal with the SBA to give it back to us. We will do so much good with these assets bought back. So legal, with the help of Ms. Shaw, that's my son, ended up negotiating the other smaller creditors to, hey, get off our cancer patient. There's no organs you want. Don't harvest our organs. They're bad. There's nothing. Took months, as Melanie said. And finally, at the end, the SBA said, you know what? Fine. All we want, you want your brand back? Take it. Give us some money. And so essentially that's what we ended up doing. That really just happened. Basically, what was it, Melanie? I want to say like 2 weeks.
Yeah, a week or two ago. Yeah.
It's been so fast because on the legal side, we've been fighting every day. Melanie and her team have been preparing for, at some point in the future, of rebirth of virus. But like these two parties were hoping so badly for the rebirth. I will personally say that I had become so invested in this rebirth. I had come away from maternity, my very short leave, you guys, you've heard of it, to get more leverage up through this bankruptcy, like get it going. And so finally we were able to do that. And so the multiple times, I will be absolutely honest, multiple times during this scenario, I was like, is this really going to happen? Because there were so many adversaries legal had to battle just for them to leave this cancer patient alone. And it was just like, we had a judge. Well, I said we had the lesser creditors, which included past defendants. We also had the SBA. So we had multiple battles in a war for the brand, the war for the brand. And so, why we call this a rebirth legal, I really didn't know that on the business side, Melanie's team, where they were also calling it a rebirth, but on legal team, we were definitely calling it a rebirth because the brand. Some of you may be thinking, okay, so you got the intangibles back from the SBA because they're the government. They want what they want, If I keep using this cancer patient. If the leg is the only thing that's like worth saving, the government wants it. Pretending like our leg is, the brand or the intangibles. Well, government, we want our leg back. We are going to take this leg and we're going to build a body. So it's like, okay, the SBA and just legal, the law requires that, okay, if you are killing off the body, where are you going to put these assets? Where are you going to put this leg? The good part, the healthy part. Where are you putting it? Well, that means we create a new entity, something that's not cancer ridden. And so that's what we all know as here, internally, we call that virus 2.0. But that is the long and short of the extremely complicated but very rewarding end result of virus 2.0 and its rebirth. And I will say that I am extremely proud to be behind that because, as I mentioned, that was probably one of the most legally complicated and legally taxing challenge I've ever had to embark upon. And when all agreements were signed and dotted, I still really can't believe it. Because when you fight for so long to save a leg, you wonder, like, are we going to save this leg? So
Exactly. And it's very appropriate that we are recording this on launch day. Today we have just released the site, and it's just, to me, the fact that I'm here and I'm sitting here right now with this happening, it is surreal. It's almost like the trauma response of you've been fighting and you've been in fight or flight for so long that now that things seem to be at peace. And yes, don't get me wrong, there's still little fires here and there, but I've missed it in a sense of like, wow, this is what it's like to be in business again. And I think, I have to speak from my perspective as someone who was in the exec team, intimately dealing with Uplift Law throughout this whole process, and Mel, you highlighted it very well, but it was, the very big key idea that I want to just stress to everyone listening right now is, bankruptcy is not an easy thing for anybody. The fact that you even have to say the word, you immediately think that just means the business is shit. It's going to a bad place. The people don't know what they're doing. You really just think about these things all the time as a connotation. But with what we were able to do was not only look at bankruptcy as a strategy to undertake, it honestly, in hindsight, now that I'm sitting here right now on launch day, it allowed for a true metamorphosis of the business to happen where it wasn't just the rebirth, it was also a cleansing. The last 8 months, transparently, I've been on unemployment, for example. I couldn't even go and find another job, even though I totally could, because I wanted to focus all of my energy and time on how are we supposed to bring virus back. So a big shout out to I'm not even saying this for me, but just to other team members that I had asked, like, would you even be willing to stay in this fight with me, even though there is no corporation to pay anybody right now, even though, yes, we are still dealing with other adversaries. And something I will transparently say, one of those adversaries was my own blood related family member who was an ex-shareholder, an ex-employee, and has come out of the woodworks to try to basically fumble this up. And again, we were never at peace through the whole process. We were already trying to deal with bankruptcy as is. And now you add on ex-shareholders, you add on other ex-employees that just feel entitled to something, when in reality, none of them were here fighting this fight like myself and 2 or 3 other people that chose to stay unemployed, right, out of our own volition in order to bring virus back. And the new entity, for what it's called, legally, the word and the name is samsara, and I chose that name personally because that is the Sanskrit word for rebirth and regrowth and a fresh start. And to me, virus 2.0, and for us being in this fortunate place of being the same people, essentially it's me and my father, and mostly my father, right, who started the business over 10 years ago, but now it's still the same core people buying it back, but running it forward in the way that we want to. And to tie it full circle, all of those issues that Melissa and Uplift Law had seen when they had first come on, that was just a compounding effect of, right, lack of due diligence, lack of structure that was in place before. And I'm not saying the team before did a bad job, not at all. They built the foundation for what the brand is. But, right, when you're focused on growth, when you're focused on just establishing cash flow to be able to survive, you don't look at structure. You don't look at the little details on that side of things because you're focused on development. And for us, it was research and development of our fabrics, continuing to bring out better designs, continuing to focus on athlete sponsorships, right? Which none of those things are free. And unfortunately, when, fortunately, when Melissa came on, she could see, wow, you guys were missing this, and this is what is leading to some legal issues. But unfortunately, they had compounded over, the last 10 years of being an operation. So even 1 or 2 years before we had to file bankruptcy last September, I would say, even when I came on the team, I already saw right away, wow, there's some massive inefficiencies here. We had a team of 24 people, right? And for a global brand with a multinational footprint, that isn't that big of a team. However, again, me being in the place of when I came in and now sitting as CEO, and for the last 8 months, especially having done everything, right? From operations, strategy, even production, looking at supply chain inefficiencies, I could literally see, wow, as a business, why were we doing the things we were doing before? Like money was just bleeding. And it makes sense. So if we bring it back to the Titanic analogy, it's like the iceberg we hit looks like just this little bit of ice over the surface, but the actual iceberg itself went, miles deep under the ocean. Like we just weren't dealing with that part of the problem because we just didn't see it. And I would say with such gratitude that with Uplift's help, as they came on board as our in-house counsel, we not only could see the rest of the iceberg, but yes, we got through the situation of bankruptcy. But now moving forward, 1, we will no longer be in this place again. And 2, I've already been working diligently with Uplift Law on setting a different foundation for virus 2.0 so that we will never be back here. And statistically, you can look it up. It's not common for people to declare Chapter 7 bankruptcy, but be able to come back in business again. It's not a statistically probable situation. So I feel like we really had everything stacked against us, against all the odds. But from the ground up, we were able to pick up those pieces that were still good, right? That people still believed in terms of the brand, not just outside customers, but myself, the core team that is still here. We could see that potential and we bet on it. And that is the true, right, entrepreneurial fashion. You have to bet against all odds, fight for the risk, because if you don't take the risk, you don't get a high reward. That's strictly how it's been. So it's been very tumultuous to say the least, but again, it's a true metamorphosis. I've learned so much as a business now owner, but as a previous executive who had gone through so much. And for those who know, right, who are in family businesses, people know it's really good when it's really good. And then when it gets bad, it's very, very bad, emotionally taxing. It's very hard to separate personal from business, especially when emotional feelings are involved. And I think Melissa, who has known our internal situation very intimately, she also had to teach us all how to navigate that. And I think, again, like I can speak candidly, and I don't know if this resonates with a lot of people out there. Before Melissa, before Uplift, I have had many experience with corporate lawyers and other people in the space, and it was always very transactional, right? It was always just this is the help we give you, hey, and here's the invoice. There wasn't ever a true investment into actually hearing us. They would listen to us, but I never felt heard. And that was also the issue that I know Russell Lin, my father, had spoken to me about with previous lawyers he worked with prior to Uplift Law. Like nobody, pardon my language, gave a shit. It was just like, okay, I'm the lawyer, I'm brought in, I get paid, and when I clock out, it's done. And I have the privilege to say if there's an emergency, and I will tell everyone, like I've dealt with some emergencies the last few weeks where I literally had to text Mel and say, hey, Mel, I'm dealing with the situation right now. As counsel, what am I supposed to do? She responds within seconds. It's the help that we've received from Uplift in this entire process has just been fantastic. And it's just been astounding to me. So honestly, without Uplift, we wouldn't have even made it this far. But now without Uplift, I wouldn't feel confident in moving forward because this is just the beginning, right? Closing the bankruptcy was a big triumph, but the work has only just begun now, truly. And I think we feel prepared for it. So just massive thank you.
Thank you. And it just like reminds me so much about like the memories. Melanie's talking about something, not just like the entrepreneurial spirit, but like when you start a business and you go through the shittiest of shit. So when you're at the bottom, like you really know that there's nowhere else to go. So you better get the fuck up. And so I mean, Melanie's right in the sense that there's actually no logical reason why Virus made it through this bankruptcy. Like, it is miraculous. And so appreciate that. And then another thing is like, with Virus, as I said, like I grew up with Virus. I think that anybody listening, aside from what's happening now, if you just think like, goddamn, like I remember my first pair of Virus shorts and how that made you feel because that was so intimately tied to what you were doing in a workout, how that workout made you feel, how that lift went up real good. And, and I think that that's, with Uplift, with me, like we speak to family businesses. I mean, small businesses, undoubtedly, I would bet you will find some family dynamic in there. And Melanie made me think, I chuckled to myself because she mentioned her, blood relative that had caused some issues. And I recall this might have happened in 2022. Russell and Melanie were going to Denmark, and I was given specific instructions related to a board meeting, and then suddenly this board meeting was hijacked at Virus HQ, and I, in my glory, showed up to break it up in my PJs because it was like a, and so that's what it is, And the other part is when this was right now, Russell Lin, still very active in Virus, is overseas doing his work to continue the rebuild of Virus 2.0. But before he had left overseas, Melanie spoke to, there was only like a few of us working in the background for if Virus was gonna, make it. And I remember Russell, we were just in the very beginning stages of bankruptcy, had said, Melissa, I can't pay you right now. And I laughed. Yep. And he said, he just said that. And I'm like, well, Russell, I can't leave. And he said, good, because we have a future. And, and that's, I think to speak to all you entrepreneurs, all you business owners. Everybody shakes your hand and gives you a high five when the money is flowing.
Mhm.
They love you. But know who is in your circle when there's no money, when the cops are after you, and when lawsuits are everywhere. So just know that every business is, as I said, in the state of California, a business is a living, breathing person. And with being a living, breathing person, it goes through like its own ebbs and flows. It may do bankruptcy. It may die. It may revive. It may rebirth. But I think Virus is a story you want to keep watching.
Yeah. And everyone loves a comeback story, but why do people love it so much? Is because you really have to understand the true nature and concept of the actual triumph, right? That dynamic of being attacked, but letting yourself be attacked. And then rather than just letting yourself sit there and die, it's figuring out how to actually come back, how to actually grow your appendages back, adapt, pivot, and move forward. And again, for what Uplift Law has done, I really call Melissa a dear friend, but also it really feels like she's part of the family. I mean, this is a family business. At one point, my own sister was also involved as well, and it wasn't nepotism by any means. It was more so just you can trust family, and that doesn't just mean blood family. It just it's chosen family of actions, people who choose to show up for you and stay in your corner, even when against all odds, it doesn't seem like it seems logical to do that. And Melissa stayed the whole way, and we didn't make it easy for her. We joke all the time internally ever since she came on. It's like we've probably given her more business than she had ever hoped to get from us. And I say that jokingly, but it's hilarious, right? Because it just again came from mismanagement of a lot of things over the last 10 years of business that had accumulated. And now it's like, oh my God, we've got a fresh, clean slate to start. And still, even though it's, I would say, quote, clean slate with a caveat, because we're still dealing with some issues, here and there, but those things are never going to go away. If anything, every single encounter that we've gone through has really made us stronger. And to me, it's again why I call this a metamorphosis and why I'm reframing it as, for those who listen and now finally know the truth. Like, this is the first time I'm publicly on camera saying we went through bankruptcy, because I also didn't want our fans and followers to get scared or nervous that we were going anywhere. And honestly, that has been, when people ask me, how do you feel about all this? Like, that has been my biggest point of gratitude, is the fact that none of our customers, none of our friends, family, and supporters ever were upset. If anything, people just said, they showed up and they said, hey, this is really sad, but you let me know when you're back and how we will support you when you're back. That has been, hands down the main response I have received from clients I'd worked with, friends of the brand, and just longtime customers I've never even met. And then now that I'm on these podcasts and I'm talking about it, I've been getting emails. I'll draw my email, and I've been getting emails from all these customers saying, hey, you don't know me, but I just really want to say I appreciate you being transparent and telling us what you've been through, because this just makes me love the brand even more. And I also think it's really important now to really have a face associated with the business. I think that was another thing that before, no one knew that Virus was started by a Taiwanese immigrant, right? Like, it's just, that in itself is a really cool ass story, right? I'm Asian American, and I get to really have the opportunity, and it's not been easy, right? It's really not been easy. I'm not here inheriting something and I get to just sit back. No, if anything, it's like my blood, sweat, and tears have gone into now having the ability to take on my father's legacy and continue it in a way that is going to have very prosperous longevity, instead of having to go through this again. But I'm very confident that we won't, because we have Melissa, we have Uplift, and again, a lot of lessons were learned from this situation, truly.
Well, thank you, Melanie, for being on the podcast. And all you listeners out there, the Classics Collection, I told you I have a warm fuzzies. When I put on my first singlet in 2015, it was Virus. And here we are opening up the Rebirth with the Classic Collection. Check it out and watch the story unfold at this Rebirth, Virus. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to the future.
And that wraps up the Lawyer Lifter podcast, aka Mel's Minutes. Catch this episode on Apple or Spotify. See you next time.